Have you ever heard stories about haunted barracks? Well, I got one for you. This one was sent to me by a United States Army sergeant, a combat engineer. I'm a United States Army sergeant, a combat engineer. My story is a rather strange one. I PCSed to Fort Riley, Kansas from Fort Lewis back in 2008. I just got back from deployment, and PCS was not something I wanted to do. I loved my unit and wanted to stay, but my branch manager had other plans. I accepted the assignment and moved on. I reported at the beginning of November after a long drive from Fort Lewis. My new unit was 1st Engineer Battalion, diehards, so they called themselves. I reported after processing the post. Battalion S1 assigned me to the 111th Engineer Company, Assassins. My first stop was talk to my new first sergeant. He was just another cookie cutter first sergeant. You know, don't step on my grass type. I sat down in the chair after he told me to sit. He started to tell me about the platoon I'm about to join. He told me it's full of retards and fuck ups, so hopefully I can lift them up a little. Or not. After he told me to sign for my barracks room key, he told me that I couldn't leave off post. I was single E5, and at a time the regulation said that E5s had to stay in the barracks. So the barracks it is. As he was telling me about the barracks situation, he told me that they had a soldier killing himself in his barracks room, and my room is right next to it. Then he said, I don't think there are any ghosts in there, you know, in case you're into that kind of stuff. His stuff is still there being inventoried before it gets sent back to his parents, so don't worry about it if you see any CID agents. While I was processing, I chose not to stay. While I wasn't processing, I chose not to stay in the barracks. I just got a hotel room in Junction City, Economy Inn, right off the highway. Well, I still had the night left, and I didn't even step in the barracks room that night. I was told that there's a training tomorrow, so I just got my gear ready and ate some KFC while watching a movie. I didn't have much stuff, just my gear and some clothes, all fit in my small Mitsubishi. In the morning, around 05, I checked out of my hotel and went to the barracks for morning formation. It was Thursday, so in the Army it usually means sergeant's time training, just a day where you go and do some training. Being a combat engineer, it meant looking for some roadside bombs. That's what I did my first day at my new unit. Compared to my previous striker unit, things seemed chaotic and unorganized, and First Sergeant wasn't kidding about my platoon. We got done with training at around 1800. I went back to my room after swinging by PX to get some linen and pillows. Only thing I had was my laptop and some clothes, along with a little portable DVD player that I brought for me from Iraq. I had a huge collection of bootleg movies that I bought while I was deployed, and I spent my night watching some of them. I couldn't really sleep, this whole Fort Riley thing sucked, I thought to myself. Suddenly, I heard banging on the wall. It was kinda hard. I jumped off my bed and turned on the lights. What the fuck? I laid back down. Maybe some guys are having a wrestling match after a couple of drinks, but I didn't hear any voices. I laid back down and went to sleep. I had a family living in Colorado, about 7-hour drive from Fort Riley, and I decided to go there on the weekend just to get away from excitement of Kansas. I spent a weekend hanging out with my family and drove back to Fort Riley on Sunday. I got back late at night. Everyone in the barracks was already asleep. It was already about 2 in the morning. I was shuffling some of my stuff from my car to my room. I was going through where CQ was sitting. The poor dude was zoning in and out. I was on the second floor when I hit the stairwell. I heard footsteps behind me. I didn't even look because I thought the CQ runner was doing his walkthrough, but when I turned to open the door, I saw that there was no one there. Again, I didn't think anything of it. Maybe just an echo. I was pretty tired after all. The next day there was usual Army Monday bullshit. PT following some motor pool maintenance. I spent all day fixing busted M113. It's like a little track that was popular in the 60s. I ate dinner at DFAC and went back to my room to take a shower. I saw one of the guys living near me walk into his room. I asked him what the hell were people doing here on Thursday night. My room was located at the very end of the hallway. It was the second before last room. The noises were coming from the last room. The guy told me that no one lives there because that's where the soldier committed suicide. Damn, I thought. Then what was all that noise coming from? Well, maybe I was just tired and hear shit. I crashed on my bed, dead tired after a long day outside in the cold. I pulled out my DVD player and was watching some horrible movie. I couldn't sleep again, so I just kept watching more horrible movies. Things started to get quiet in the barracks as everyone started to go to sleep. It was 01 when I started to hear voices coming out of the room that was supposed to be empty. It sounded like someone was talking on the phone. It was quite inaudible at first, until I heard screaming, "You fucking bitch!" I again jumped out of the bed. I put on my slippers and walked out in the hallway. I went to the room and banged on the door. I started to think someone was fucking with me. No one responded. I banged on the door again, harder this time. Door behind me opened and a soldier poked his head out. A soldier was curious what I was doing with all that noise. I asked him if he heard anything. He said no, he just woke up. I went back to bed. Next day wasn't anything special. We basically hung out at the company area and I was just meeting everybody. I started to get along with a couple of other NCOs. I started asking questions about the room right next to me. They all seemed hesitant to speak about it because there was still an active investigation going on, and people were getting interviewed by CID left and right. But if NCOs didn't talk, I knew who would. I remember the soldier that opened the door last night. I approached him and started asking questions about the guy who committed suicide. The guy didn't really know much because he just recently got here himself, but he said his roommate does. His roommate went on emergency leave and was gonna come back the next day. I repeated the same evening routine by going to DFAC and then heading to my barracks room. I bought some beers at Class 6. Yeah, I know what day of the week it is. Sorry that you disapprove. I had 2 or 3 beers that night. I haven't heard anything this time. I just ended up passing out. I had to get up to go to the bathroom. I looked at my watch. It said it was about 02:45. 2:45 a.m. for you civilian types. The bathroom right next to me was small, and as soon as you walk in, to your left there were 2 sinks and the shower. To the right there were 2 toilets and a urinal. I used the urinal and stepped over to the sink to wash my hands. Suddenly I started hearing sobbing. It was quiet, but I could still hear it. Both of the doors to the toilet were open, so I wasn't sure where it was coming from. When I turned the water off, sobbing turned into crying. Again, I have no clue where it was coming from, but I had a chill running down my spine. I freaked out and rushed out of the bathroom, back to my room, and back to bed. The next day I was able to chase down the guy that knew what happened. Unlike everybody else, he was very talkative. He was a specialist a couple of months away from getting out of the army, so he cared less for investigative procedures. He told me that the guy committed suicide because his girl left him. Apparently, it was his high school sweetheart, and he loved her very much. After he came back from deployment, they started having issues, and eventually she broke up with him. Maybe there's more to that story, but that's all I heard. One day, he had a very angry conversation with her on the phone. After that, he went to the bathroom, where he spent about 2 hours. And then he went back to his room, put a gun to his head, and squeezed the trigger. It was late at night, and somehow nobody heard anything. He wasn't found until a couple of days later. A huge failure on the part of his team leader, who was supposed to check on him daily. That's why NCOs were not talking about it much. Either way, I heard enough. We didn't really do much that day, just same old army nonsense. We finished the day by getting ready for Thursday training, signing out some trucks from Task C. It's like a training support warehouse that had all the equipment that unit can come and get. The other half of the day, I was still fucking with the broken M113. It had a huge Class 3 oil leak. Class 3 means that oil was literally pouring out of the engine block, flooding the bottom of the track. I went back to company area after leaving motor pool. When I walked in my office, my platoon sergeant informed me that I had to cover down on CQ for another guy. It wasn't a huge problem with me. Nothing happened that night, thank God. Next morning after PT, I reported to CQ desk. CQ duty, or charge of quarters, is basically you're being up 24 hours, reporting anything that happens in the barracks to your commander and first sergeant after hours. Most of the time, nothing happened. I was hoping I didn't have to call the first sergeant. Most of the time, you'll get your ass chewing for not getting enough information about the incident, but that doesn't happen very often. My night on CQ was pretty quiet. At around 0300, I got up to do my CQ checks. I walked on the second floor, checked my cleaning closet and bathrooms and cleanliness. I started walking to the other end of the hallway where my room was when I saw a soldier dressed in ACU walking into allegedly empty room. I yelled down the hallway at him and told him to stop and get out of that room, since I had a very clear instructions from my first sergeant about not letting anybody in there. Soldier didn't even react like I existed. He just walked in the room and slammed the door. How the fuck did he do that? That thing was blocked and only CQ and the first sergeant had the key. I went down to CQ desk and pulled out a key for that fucking room. I told my runner I'll be right back, and I went to the second floor and went straight to it. I went in and turned the lights on. Room was in state of a complete mess. There was some evidence bags, tape, along with belongings of a soldier laying all over the place. Who the fuck was that guy that walked in here? And what the fuck was he doing in his ACUs at 03 in the morning? Did I just see a ghost? Quite frankly, I didn't catch what he looked like. I didn't even see his face or any other features. As I was looking at the room, wall locker door just slammed shut. Chills went down my spine and an overwhelming feeling of fear took over. I didn't even turn the lights on. I just closed the door and went downstairs to smoke a cigarette. I wasn't gonna go tell anybody about this. I didn't want anybody to think that I was crazy. Those were different times. Nowadays you can openly talk about your mental health, but not back in 2008. I finished my CQ shift on Thursday morning. To my luck, I didn't have to do training. Yay. I just crashed on my bed and passed out. I woke up right before dinner and went down to DFAC to get some food. It was already kind of late, but I couldn't sleep, so I decided to take a drive down to Topeka. With no particular destination, just driving around and exploring. I got back to my room at around 10 o'clock. Barracks were still well and alive, with dudes drinking and playing Xbox with their doors open. I was a new guy, so I wasn't just gonna stumble into somebody's party. I still had some beers left, so I decided to finish off the six-pack. I couldn't sleep again, so I was hoping beers were gonna help me with that. I pulled out my DVD player and started watching the movie called Rise of a Foot Soldier. It was a really good movie, and I got fully consumed by it. It was 0100 when I heard a gunshot from inside the barracks. I jumped out of the bed and ran outside the hallway. I looked around and it was empty. No one else woke up. It was dead and empty. I walked down the hallway and I heard that somebody was still playing Xbox. I knocked on the door. Soldier answered. I asked him if he heard anything. He said no. Damn, there it is again. How come I'm the only one that hears shit around here? Is this ghost hunting? And is it haunting just me? Well, that's some hazing bullshit. After this incident, it was quiet for a while. I didn't hear any more noises coming out of that room, and I thought finally it was over. I ended up going home to Colorado for 2 weeks of leave. I came back on January 2nd. First night after I got back, it was quiet. What I saw was still giving me creeps, but I started to forget it. But on the second night, it came back again. I went to sleep early that day just to catch up on sleep I lost while I was driving from leave. I took some NyQuil and passed out. Suddenly, a super loud police knock woke me up. I freaked out thinking I missed PT, and it was my squad leader knocking on the door trying to wake me up. I did take some NyQuil, and it usually knocks me out like that. I got up expecting to see my squad leader at the doorway, but when I opened the door there was nobody. In fact, it was quiet. I looked at my wristwatch and I saw that it was 0300. God damn it, I thought. Maybe it was just a dream. I collapsed back on my bed and heard a knock again. At this point, I didn't know what to think. I started to think that I was going crazy. For all I know, maybe I was. I didn't open the door this time, but knocking just kept going. I started hearing voices. They were kind of vague, but it sounded something like, "Help me, please, I just need to talk to somebody." What the hell, I thought. This is too much. I rushed to the door and swung it open. I don't know what I was thinking. I left the wall locker doors open behind me, and as I opened the door, they slammed shut, loud as hell. I ran out of the room and ran to my car. Fuck that. I ain't going back in there. I'm talking to the first sergeant first thing in the morning, and if he sends me to mental health, I'm going fucking AWOL. I slept in the car for the rest of the night with just my PT zone. At around 0545, I drove over to the company, hoping to run into the first sergeant. I pulled up and saw his car parked in a spot. Awesome. He was there in the meeting with the company commander and all the platoon leaders. So I waited right outside his office until he was done. Finally, he walked out and saw me. He asked if I wanted to talk to him. I told him yes. When we walked in his office, he closed the door and asked me if it was about my barracks room, and I said yes, it was. He lazily sat down with an attitude and put his feet up on the table. He said, "Look, I'm sick and tired of you E5s bitching about your barracks. Lucky for you, I'm getting a new batch of soldiers. And guess what? There's no barracks rooms for you guys. So, in 2 weeks, you're to leave the barracks and go find off-post apartments. I know you don't have basic allowance for housing yet, but, or also known as BH, it's like a housing allowance that Army pays you if you live off-post. But he told me it kicks in on February 1st, but we can take an advance to cover any moving expenses." I was in a bit of a shock, but super happy on the inside. I was about to come over the table and give that bastard a kiss on the forehead. I guess he's not that much of an asshole after all. After PT, I went off to my room and emptied out. I had some money from my deployment, which I used to pay for a first available apartment in Manhattan, Kansas. Small Kansas college town, home of Kansas State University, about 20 minutes from Fort Riley. I was glad to get the fuck out of those barracks. They still give me creeps, and I feel awful for all soldiers that have to live there. To my surprise, I didn't hear anything about the room anymore. Once his stuff was all gone, all the paranormal activity seemed to stop. Maybe he attached himself to objects that were still in his room. Either way, I'm glad it's over. Have you ever heard of Joint Special Operations Command? I hope you didn't, because I'm a member of a special mission unit that is supposed to be super secret. It's so secret that they make movies and show about us. Anyways, I am part of Combat Application Group, also known as Delta Force, or Operational Detachment Delta, or, well, you know where I'm going with this. My story began in 1998 when I joined the Army. I kept getting in trouble as a teenager, so my parents were happy that I finally chose something that will give me a structured environment and discipline. I joined as 11th Bravo infantryman. When I went to basic training and got out of the bus, I was attacked by a horde of drill sergeants. At that point, I realized that I might have made a mistake. Have you ever watched The Jarhead? Great movie, I recommend it. There's a scene in there where drill instructor yells at the Marine recruit, asking him, "What the fuck are you even doing here?" And he responds with, "I got lost on my way to college, sir." Well, that was me. I kept trying to think of ways to get the fuck out, but deep enough inside into basic training and AIT, I decided to give it a chance. I was never really good with listening to others. There was a teen rebel spirit well alive inside of me that needed to get beaten out. And basic training did just that. I graduated basic training and went down to Fort Stewart, Georgia, 3rd Infantry Division, Rock of the Marne, just in time to deploy to Kosovo. Kosovo was a peacekeeping mission with occasional construction projects. Nothing really memorable about this deployment. I came back to Fort Stewart at the end of 1999, and the division was gearing up to go back. I spent time fucking off with my unit until a buddy of mine dragged me to Special Forces recruiting brief. The recruiter showed us the awesome video and told us how laid back things were in Special Forces compared to regular Army. Well, let's just say I was sold. Now all I had to do is to get to rank of corporal or specialist, and I can get orders to Fort Bragg to attend Special Forces selection. I was a PFC at a time with 15 months in service, and I quickly got squared away and began doing a lot of BT. My next APFT, or Army Physical Fitness Test, I scored 300, which is maximum score. I was immediately put on a waiver for promotion to specialist. Little did my unit know, the day I got pinned, I went down to see a Special Forces recruiter. They had me take a PT test again, and a week later I had my orders on hand to go to Fort Bragg. My leadership was skeptical that I can make it through, knowing my rambunctious nature, but I was good to go. Special Forces fit my needs of fucking off and shooting people in the face. At least that was my idea of it. I kept having an image of me walking into my company office with a green beret while having my hands in my pockets, telling everybody trying to correct me to fuck off. But there was a price to pay for being able to do that. I flew to Fayetteville, North Carolina in summer 2000. Paid for my hotel on post. It was called Airborne Inn. It was rather nice for an on-post hotel. I was able to chug a couple of beers the night prior, beginning of SFAS. And finally, the next morning, I headed down to the parking lot where SFAS cadre were picking us up. Instant feeling of regret came again when I showed up in my stripped-down BDUs with a white engineer tape. I realized I'm back to the crazy training environment. We were loaded on the truck and driven to the place called Camp McCall. That's where selection takes place. Surprisingly enough, I was quickly in a groove. It was demanding physically, but it was very laid back overall. There was no screaming and pointless mass punishment events that are so rampant in basic training. I was rocking all the training events. Luckily, all of them were physical, with some mental mindfuck games, but that was only during land navigation course that's called STAR course. To my surprise, I got selected. The Special Forces qualification course is a long journey. After I finished the SEER school, also known as Survive, Evade, Resist, Escape, in a nutshell, it's just a course that teaches you how to survive as a POW. I walked out and I found out that the United States was attacked on the September 11th after graduating on the September 20th. Frankly, all I wanted to do at that point is to go fuck some shit up overseas, but I still had to go through Robin Sage. That's like a capstone course that teaches you how to operate as an ODA, or 12-man team that recruits, trains, and employs natives to overthrow their governments. Ha ha ha. No, really, that's what we do. After graduating and donning my green beret, I already forgot about going to my unit and telling everyone to fuck off. I got assigned to Fort Campbell, 5th Special Forces Group, 2nd Battalion. 5th Special Forces Group was assigned to Central Command, right where I wanted to go. They were in charge of task force running things in Afghanistan. I deployed with my team at the end of 2002. When I deployed, I ran into some Delta Force dudes. They were even cooler than us. They had some awesome gear and didn't even have to wear uniforms. Damn, I thought, I should check this place out. During my deployment, we mostly trained Afghan forces. They were kinda useless for the most part, but they were getting better as we went. The deployment was only 7 months, so I came back in 2003 just as Operation Iraqi Freedom was kicking off. My company was already tagged to go to Iraq to train a rocket counterterrorism unit. I decided to contact Delta Force recruiter. Their process was similar to Special Forces, but a lot of more cryptic. I emailed my application packet and got a response. I was told that my application is being reviewed and they will contact me. And they did. About 2 weeks ago. Right before my ODA was about to get on a plane to go to Iraq, with set of my orders to report to Virginia for selection. My team captain was a bit pissed, but there was no shortage of volunteers to deploy to Iraq. They let me go, and I was on the plane flying to attend Delta selection. The Delta selection sucked even more than FSFAS. The rugged terrain and longer rock marches really beat me up. Luckily, rock marching and PT in general was never my problem. I went through Delta selection and got picked up again. I attended a course called OTC. It's an operator training course. 6 months of shooting and CQB or close quarter battle. It was like the coolest thing I've ever done. You shoot so much it becomes like a second nature to you. It's almost like a weapon is an extension of you at that point. The atmosphere was different from Special Forces. I grew up in California, so surfer-like culture of Sea Squadron was like a paradise to me. I was surrounded by badass dudes, and I can finally call myself that as well. Yes, I was a badass. No one can stop me now. Well, to my disappointment, I quickly got humbled. Being a new and the youngest guy on a team, I was being treated like such until I proved myself. My team leader, let's just call him Wild Bill, said, "You have a lot to learn," when he first met me. That's about the only thing he said in the next 2 months. We were headed back to Afghanistan. The rumor had it we were to continue search for Osama bin Laden. Since Delta already caught Saddam, he was back at the top of the list. We deployed to Afghanistan in 2005. Finally, I got to go to my first mission. It was a high-value target capture or kill. We flew in at night and raided a couple of empty houses, not finding anything. We turned around and went back. That went on for a couple of weeks. Finally, we had an intel hit on an American hostage. But the location was not in Afghanistan. She was held hostage in Iran by an Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps operatives. Wild Bill was visibly concerned about hitting Iranian territory, but the village she was held in was close enough to Afghan border where air support can drop some heat if we needed it. We were briefed about how sensitive this mission was. This was a quick in and out. Intel picked up about 4 guards and some civilians that were hanging out. The whole thing was a bit bizarre. All we knew that hostage was an Israeli-American physicist. What the fuck was she doing there? She wasn't teaching advanced physics to Iranian kids, did she? But we told everything. We told the rest of her background was highly classified, and all we needed to know is that what she looks like. Well, fair enough. We began planning and rehearsals for upcoming mission. Birds were gonna fly below radar and insert our team right on the roof of the target house while the second team lands on the ground. Should be easy peasy. We thought 4 guards wasn't a whole lot to take out if we worked fast enough. We had to be in and out quick because there was a scheduled 500-pound bomb drop on the target house right after our exfil. It only gave us a couple hours for mission to be complete. That was a huge concern for Wild Bill. He wanted more time, but Commander said that it was all he was going to get, given the fact that mission is in Iran and not in Afghanistan. We finally got on the Chinook that was going to take us to the target house. It was about 2200 with a 2-hour flight. We were going to get picked up by the other sortie of Chinooks just because of how far it was. There was a quick reaction force consisted of Ranger platoon that was going to hang out near the border on a makeshift helipad in case we ran into some issues. We flew low to where you could almost smell vegetation from the mountains below. Finally, hit the objective. Chinook hovered over the target house and we quickly fast drove down. We could see the second burn landing out in the distance with dudes running out of the back of the ramp. All I was doing at that point is following the guy in front of me. The building itself was a small 2-story structure with a double roof, which had a little balcony. We jumped down on the lower roof and started scanning for threats. The ground guys were busting through the gate when 2 guards ran outside without knowing we were right behind them. We took both of them out faster than they could yell out. I put good half of a mag into one. The gate was busted and second team started pouring into the compound. We turned on our IR markers so they don't mistakenly shoot us. They already knew we were there and they just went straight for the door, which was left open by the guards. We heard yelling in Farsi and we saw our remaining two guards walk out with their hands up. Damn, that was fast. Now all we gotta do is take the hostage and get the fuck out. The guard kept pointing inside and saying, "Danger, danger," in English. I didn't really understand what was going on, but Wild Bill was having none of it. Guys threw both guards down, tied them up, and moved into the house. As the ground team entered the house, things got quiet. All I kept hearing on the radio net is guys calling out, "Clear, clear." When suddenly, I heard, "What the fuck is that?" And shooting started. It sounded like hundreds of pieces of bacon started popping out of nowhere. I got startled and looked and took a knee. I didn't know what was going on, but something went horribly wrong. The assistant team leader motioned to us to come inside the house and see what was going on. 3 guys stayed on the outside pulling security in case reinforcements show up. I went inside the house. I was expecting to get in a gunfight. My blood was pumping. The radio chatter fell silent right after the shooting, so I thought the whole team was just died in place. We went inside looking for them, but there was nobody there. There was not even a sign of them. There was no breasts on the floor, no bodies. It was like they never went inside. We were trying to move tactically in a stack, clearing one room after another. There was a basement in that house, but the point man wasn't able to find it. Now finally, there was only one door left. The house was kind of cold and dark inside. There was very little light, just a small light bulb in the hallway. Suddenly we started hearing voices, but it was like they were coming from everywhere, like right next to us. We all stopped in shock. What the fuck? It felt like we were tripping on mushrooms. I started seeing waves of light that I wouldn't be able to see with the naked eye. Things started to slow down, including voices of my teammates. I dropped my M4, making a loud noise. Luckily, it was unsafe, so it didn't fire. Voices were getting closer and closer, and I started to recognize my teammates' voices. I heard Wild Bill talking, and as he was talking, I started to see him. He was in the larger room attending to some woman laying on the floor. He yelled at me, "Get the fuck up and help!" I quickly jumped on my feet and walked towards him. I couldn't believe it was real. I touched him just to make sure it was real. He lashed out, "Get your fucking hands off me, you weirdo! Help me get her up!" We got her up and walked out. The whole time, helping him move the woman, all I thought that I had gone insane, but so was the rest of my teammates. They were all in the same state of mind. My buddy's eyes were wide open as he was looking at the members of the missing team. I asked Bill, "You guys didn't see that?" He replied, "See what? All I saw was 2 more guards that we had to smoke. Intel fucked it up again. We almost got killed, but yeah, that was crazy." As we walked out, 2 Chinooks flew in to pick us up. It felt surreal. We got everyone on a bird and left 2 captured guards tied up in the front yard of the house. I don't know what it was, but maybe there was some kind of disturbance of space and time in that place, but I'm glad it turned out okay, and we didn't get stuck in some void for the rest of our lives.